Hey guys, how's it going? My old faithful Tundra, my beater, with 215,000 miles on it, has let me down. Seems okay, right? It's running. That's it. If you rev the gas, you get some. Try to let it idle. And that's all she's got. She has definitely got no power steering. I already tried purging the fluid, running that through, see if that made any improvement. It did not. If anything, it got worse. So I got a rebuild pump. We're gonna go change that pump out. And then possibly we'll take the old one, we'll take it apart and see just what failed in it, how it fails, what goes wrong with them. I've never had one apart, so I figured it'd make for a good video. Let me get her in the garage, up on the lift, and let's start wrenching. Now we're under the hood. It was, I don't know, about a week ago, it started making noise again. I ordered the pump and all, and it wasn't leaking. When it first happened, well, it's another story. I'll tell you that a little bit later. It started making a lot of noise, and we kind of lost it driving. You'd hear it moaning like you heard it, but the power steering was still working. Got back and looked under, did not see anything leaking under the truck. At first I thought it was running out of fluid. It was making that whine. Not the case. Nothing dripping underneath it. The reservoir was still full. And I said, oh, well, that's when I purged the fluid out of it and, you know, possibly see if that would help correct it. And no go. Now that I'm looking at it, you can actually see down below, down there, it is actually, looks like it's whipping some fluid out, in the back of the pulley is wet too. So she's a goner. Let's get the air intake out of our way, give ourselves a little bit of room to film and to work and dig. I guess you should make sure the two of them match before we tear that one out, right? It looks. Well, the hoses look like they're coming in and out of the right spot anyway. Looks like it's got 3 bolts that hold it. Doesn't look very complicated. Good. Let's get the tensioner backed off so we can get the belt off of it. Got a 1/2 inch ratchet on it. Looks like that belt's about done to the end of its frayed. I'll leave that ratchet right on there. I don't think it's going to be in our way. The hardware, on the other hand, getting to the... Nah, it just looks like 14mm nuts. Might as well get the fluid out of that reservoir. As soon as we pull the hoses off, it's all just going to drain out anyway. I don't have anything big enough to block it, so I'm just going to... Plus, I don't think it's going to hurt getting rid of more of that fluid. You should really flush the system every time. Color doesn't look too bad. It's not like you get it all. What I did is I pulled one of the hoses off. I pulled the return hose off the reservoir and added a hose to that, to a pail. While it was running, I kept filling the reservoir up with fresh fluid until I saw a color change in the pan of the return hose. And at the same time, I was turning the rack the best I could back and forth to try to get any fluid that was in the rack purged out of it too. Yeah, normal, like the fluid that would have came in, it would have actually been clear. Essentially, it's automatic transmission fluid. And I think for automatic transmission fluid, they add a color to it. But I think it's the same as power. I think they're the same. They make a power, you know, something called power steering fluid. It's essentially a very thin hydraulic oil. All right. Hopefully it's going to clear that stud. That stud has a little nipple on the end of it to be able to wrench on. I'm hoping the pump will have enough clearance to come out of the way. We'll find out. The chances are we'll be able to wiggle that out of there. I have a feeling that bolts are made like that we have to take it out, but let's go find out. Oh no. Whoa, good. Alright. Just quickly eyeball that one to the new one, make sure she's good, and we'll do a swap. Look pretty good. The only thing I still have to swap over, I guess, is this elbow. And it just looks like it has one bolt holding it, probably an O-ring on there. Everything else looks pretty much the same. Good. I'm going to run to the store real quick and grab a belt before they close so that I'm not putting the old one back on. I'm cursing out the fact that it doesn't have the new seals. Help if I look at the package, right? Because right there is what you need for that guy. That guy had a bunch of corrosion on it too, so why does that one look fatter? So she said. You didn't miss much. Put it all back together. It's just a reverse of everything that you saw with the new belt on it. Drink up, my little friend. Now, I know the pump is empty. And I think it'll fill the return line just through the reservoir. But I'm going to pretty much top it off because you really don't want it the pump to draw air, because then it kind of bubbles up, gets air in the system. It'll burp itself out eventually, but it just takes longer for it to do it. Sometimes it could be you turn it on and turn it off a couple of days for it to finally get all the whining and the air bubbles out of it. So I got to finish topping that off. Let's go fire it up. Yeah, let's make some noise. All the way to unlock. Look out the other side. I'm gonna go fill it up again. Okay, I bet if you had two people, you could even see like the bubbles that are down inside of it. That's what I'm talking about. It kind of whips it into a froth. Like eventually it'll, even if it does do it, you'll get it all out of it. Take a quick look, make sure we're not leaking out of anything. A little wet around that banjo, but I think it's okay. I think it's just from when I put it together. We'll keep an eye on that. I'm looking at that right there. Garbage. Well, at least they got power steering. Not happy about it. And eventually it'll get quiet. I'm gonna go top it off one more time. I think I'm gonna back it outside and I'll just let it run. No, that banjo's leaking. It's wet around it. Should have left the old seal on there. tighten it down a little more. It looks all right. Filled it 3 times, the level staying up to, looks like right about there for now. So, put that outside and I'll let it run, let it circulate it through. I let it run outside for about 10-20 minutes and everything seemed okay, but very slight leak at the banjo nut. So when I took it apart, that's the new crush washers it came with. And here's the original ones. So, the new ones, just not the right size. It's too much play around the shoulder of it. It's having a hard time getting a good seal on it with that much slop on there. Back with the old stuff. Factory. I think we got it. Yeah, it was puddling up on the bottom. Right there. There we go. I call that for the win. Very slight noise. Again, that'll go away in a little bit. Good for another 215,000 miles. Alright, what do you say we do a little autopsy on why it failed. I don't know if we're going to have to take the pulley off or not. Hopefully not. I think we're just going to have the 4 bolts in the back. We'll buzz them off and we see if we can kind of go pop this off. I'm curious to see even how it works. My guess is going to be like maybe a single or like 2 pistons that move up inside and just check valves on each side to move flow around. Let's go find out. Apparently they don't want us in there. Well, that's not going to stop us. It's got to go bigger. How about 1/2 inch? That's got her. Give her some love taps right there, maybe. I think we're in. A little rotary setup. Neat. Yeah, you can see a bunch of hamburger right there on the surface is all chewed. I don't know what starts it though. It's a sealed system, you know. Heat. As you can tell, like the fluid got hot. So I want to. Do you think they're stuck? That one moves. It's got to be a reason why it doesn't build pressure anymore, right? The winding, I think the winding is just like, again, air being trapped in there and it never gets rid of it. I wonder if they're supposed to be. Let's see if we can get a pair of. Let's see if we can pull one of those out. I don't think the whole assembly is probably right through the shaft, right? Yeah. So the only way you would get that is if you take it or flip it over. So when they rebuild it, because that's pretty scored too. Yeah. Yeah, right there, there's a kind of like a metal has been moved and redeposited, kind of like a spun bearing. So let's go grab a, like I said, a pair of fine little needle nose. The edge is kind of chewed up. So I would just, I thought possibly they would have a spring behind it, but I guess not. Let me lift that right out of there. It's got play. I bet you I wonder if that whole shaft has to come. I think we'll go that way. Got a snap ring? I think it's got a little baby snap ring in there. Let's see if we can get that out of there. Do more dissecting. This is a core, so I gotta watch out. I don't trash it too bad. I gotta get it back together. Where'd it go? There it is. The pliers are backwards. Here's where I stab myself in the fingers. I don't think I have enough room. I think it's got to get some clearance. Like either the shaft's got to go up or the impeller's got to go down so that the snap ring can come out. I'll get it. Yeah, I just had to pull up on a pair of vice grips and give me some slack to pop the snap ring off. Let's see what we got. Well, it's hamburger all the way around, huh? Yeah. I wonder if, like we were just saying a little earlier, that when that went and ground itself, I wonder if these guys can't float because the metal's kind of peened over on them. Like they should float real easy, but I wonder if that interference, like I can't push them up. They can go the other way, no problem. Come on. Down is no problem, but up in there, that's jammed. So I have a feeling it probably inhibits the movement of them. Again, gravity, they just spin out with gravity, right? This thing's spinning at whatever RPM. And these just kind of stick to the wall of that chamber, draw fluid from one port and then deposit it in the other. Not sure what's what, but that's generally the idea. Kind of like how an oil pump works, kind of the same idea, right? Yeah, so that's what I think. If we probably took a file, like took this apart, filed the groove in each one of these so that they would float again, and then, you know, kind of machined or stoned this down, I bet you could probably get to work again. Not worth it, you know. I think the rebuild pump was 120. The effort it takes you to go through it, but yeah, they definitely are bound up like that. Or you guys could probably, if you did it and then flipped it over, is it symmetrical? Looks it. That's probably what they do when they rebuild them. But even with this though, what would you do with that? Like that's all hammered. And what was the original failure that caused it? All right, so what was I doing that caused it to do it? And again, it's old age that caused it, but my wife and I went out to breakfast. We were checking out a new restaurant in a different town. We're cruising around. It had just snowed. You know where I'm going with this? And she goes over there. She goes, look, what's that building? Is that a movie theater? I go, yeah, it's empty. So we went by the windows and it's tape on the windows. It's closed, you know, it's done. Oh, we got more parts that are moving in there. Anyway, What do you do with an empty parking lot? It just snowed. Progressed to go in there and do donuts. That was about 3 good donuts in 4-wheel drive, and of course you're pegging it, you're wide open, and all of a sudden she just started screaming, made a funny noise, and the steering wheel was getting real hard to move. So that's what brought it on. All right, so how would this work separate? So this isn't keyed to the shaft. This kind of sits. Does it sit still or does it spin? Seems like it would spin, right? Can't. Maybe it just sits down in there. Yeah, it looks like it's keyed. That was on there. And it just kind of galled itself up. I don't know if like there's a start with like a little piece of chip breaks off and just keeps going around and around and just keeps doing more and more damage. That's why you got to flush it too, because you got to make sure that there's none of the old debris in there, because it'll just take out the new pump too. Like I said, I did that before we even started. That's why you see all this red fluid in here. Before it was all like a black burnt smelling thing. Well, I don't know. Is there any more you want to go take apart? There just looks like an O-ring that's in there. It seals one side of it off from the other. And my guess is just going to be a couple of bearings. That's pretty tight though. That's got a lot of drag on it for something that should be a bearing. That has 214,000 miles. I think it should spin like butter. I wonder if something else kind of cooked in there, or if that maybe even that's what started it. For a while, the truck was making like a high-pitched whine. Kind of sounded like tea, a tea kettle going off, but not as pronounced. I was convinced it was the belt that was going. Apparently not. So maybe the bearing is what was failed. And maybe you got play in it. There we go. Said he wouldn't come apart. Yes, I don't think there's any bearing. It looks like there's just a bushing with a vein. Yeah. So it's just a bushing, no bearings. Well, that's actually a bearing. It's kind of like same as like a connecting rod. And then what they do, like VW engines do this too, there's a groove that's in it that has oil pumped in it, and another groove, as it spins, always wants to push the oil back to the center of the body. A VW is like that. It's got no seal on the main pulley, not the flywheel side, but the other side. How about that? See any scarring on that? Not really. So what's your thoughts? What do you think caused the original failure? Don't say donuts. That was the end result. That was the last straw, maybe. Alright guys, I can go throw this back together, put it back in the box, and pretend that we were never in there, go get my $65 back, and hopefully our truck, which has been running out there the whole time, hasn't pissed all the fluid out underneath it and burned up the new one. Alright guys, with that, I'm going to go call her. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. A little bit of wrenching, a little bit of show and tell, a little bit of a autopsy or exploratory surgery. And we'll do it again sometime. I'll return it like that. You didn't say how it has to go back, right? Just it needs to go back. Like I was never in there. Other than that, we won't talk about that. I don't know. That's why I had to get a new one. The front pulley fell off. That's the way it was. We'll just install that right about there. Yeah, now it's complete.